Thanks so much for listening. Before getting into today's episode, I just wanted to let you know that I would love to add value to you, your organization, and those you serve through speaking, training, professional development, or coaching. Over the last year, I've been fortunate to work with those in higher education, pre-K 12, and the corporate space. To learn more, visit my website at cjleadership.com or send me an email at chris@cjleadership.com. I can't wait to hear from you, and now on to our episode. Welcome back to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. As always, so happy you took time out of your busy schedule to invest in yourself and those you serve as a leader. Hey, I'm always excited to have guests that I know are going to add value to you and those you serve, regardless of what industry or area of education you're in. And today is no exception. Today, very excited to be joined by Dr. Greg Tiemann. Dr. Tiemann brings nearly 2.5 decades of educational leadership experience to our conversation. He's currently a high school principal in the Millard district, I believe at Millard West High School, and he leads one of the region's largest schools, which, for those of you not familiar, is in the Omaha, Nebraska area. Has over 2,300 students and a staff of 200 educators. And through his career, he's become known for taking a data-driven approach to educational excellence. He spearheaded innovative programs like AP Capstone and comprehensive multi-tiered system of support. And he's also developed targeted initiatives such as a freshman success program to ensure every student has the foundation they need to survive. Beyond the day-to-day operations of running a large high school in Nebraska, he is passionate about developing the next generation of educational leaders through mentoring and coaching, and he's been particularly focused on rebuilding and strengthening school culture in our post-pandemic world, implementing weekly communication strategies and feedback systems designed to support both veteran and new teachers in the profession. Centers on 4 key areas or pillars, such as expanding academic success for all students, continuously improving instructional practice, culture, and driving equity through systematic data-informed decision-making. So, Dr. Tiemann, thank you for joining us, and how are you doing today?
It's my pleasure, Chris, to be here. Thank you very much for hosting this and having a chance to have a great conversation here.
Dr. Tiemann is currently the principal at Millard West High School, and he can tell us a little bit more about that, but it is essentially what most would call a suburb of Omaha, Nebraska. Millard itself is a very, very large district. A few episodes back, we had a now retired superintendent of that district, Dr. Jim Sutphin, on. And so let's just get started, Greg. Give us a little bit of background about yourself and a little bit about your journey that has brought you now to leading a very large, probably one of the largest high schools in the state of Nebraska.
Yeah, my pleasure. Chris, I will start with a little disclaimer that I came from Emporia State University, and I know that that's our rival school with Fort Hays State, but that's kind of our joke that you and I have had that connection where I started out. I took a college position with Creighton University as a student, and so that moved us up to the Omaha area. Omaha is it's a great town. It's a lot of opportunities for us. Started off working with the Boys Town schools, then worked over into Bellevue East High School as a teacher and a dean of students, and then from that administrative experience worked over into the Millard School District at Millard North High School for 6 years, and this is 18 years at Millard West starting this fall.
All right. And yeah, so since you put it down, not to age you, but I think you are in year 24 or 25 in K-12 education, which is wonderful, and certainly thank you for that. And yeah, as Greg said, what I call my full-time, my day job is I'm a teacher ed chair at Fort Hays State. And we are Emporia State, his alma mater. Now, while we were founded based on Emporia State as a teacher's college, we're in the same state, same conference. And you have also, in addition to your undergraduate, again, just remind us, where did you get your graduate degrees and then your doctoral degree?
Yeah, those were at University of Nebraska at Omaha.
Okay. So, Greg, I think, and I said before we hit record, leadership is leadership. Those that are listening that might be in higher ed, even I'm so fortunate that I started my career in K-12, but even if I didn't, I hope that I would have still realized that if you are leading in a schoolhouse, whether it's an elementary school, a high school, or a college, there are fundamental truths about educational leadership, and people such as yourself, you see so much in your career, heck, so much in 1 week. What are, as we talk about leadership, what's your overall philosophy, and what are some things that you have learned about leadership in your extensive career?
Yeah, I think a lot of things I learned at the University of Nebraska Omaha, but a lot of it just through experience. So I was thinking about this before we spoke today that a lot of I think leadership is about hope, trust, compassion, and stability that you can provide to your building and your staff and your students and your parents. And if I say the word trust, I know trust is something that's a lot of study, a lot of research has been done on it. But as far as the research, as far as the experience has taught me, is that you have to build trust before you start directing people. So they have to, people today in today's world, we have a natural distrust. That's kind of a default for everyone. No one trusts the media. No one trusts the government. No one trusts leaders. And so if I were to ask, humbly ask our staff, how many of you completely trust me? I wouldn't expect that every hand would raise. So, but I think that that's important to establish trust from the beginning. That means sometimes you have to welcome dissent. You have to welcome people to disagree with you and put your ego aside and be a learner and a listener in that situation. Building leadership has taught me that you have to balance the human needs along with the organizational needs. There are many things, people are in different stations of their career, many different challenges happening in their classroom. And so a lot of what you can be very focused on data, mission, programs, all those things are important, but the human needs of your teachers and your students and your parents, staff, all those things, you have to have a strategy and a way to bring influence by understanding their needs. And finally, that we did a lot of study with culture. This last year, did a lot of listening to our staff. We did brought a lot of research into things. I credit Todd Whitaker for a lot of the books he's written on school culture. We brought some of those measurements into our school along with our regular climate survey to kind of look and see where we are, where is the school. And so if you're looking at the topic of culture, culture is really about leadership. It's a leadership tool, not just a byproduct. You can't just say we're going to change our culture. You really have to start with changing your leadership. And leadership, like I said, compassion, trust, hope, and then also stability.
Thank you for sharing those. Couldn't agree more. I've often said, and I got this a couple years ago reading a book that Ken Blanchard wrote, and in it he always says is the opposite of trust is control. And I really appreciate that you talked about those values of hope and trust, compassion, stability. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is very important is the overall culture and climate of your organization. And talk a little bit about what you found. You said you did some work. Those that aren't familiar with Todd Whitaker's work, just go to Amazon. You'll find some great stuff on there. And that's something that is important to me that I continue to not only research and train people on, but challenge myself to get better in, is that daily culture and climate. What were some things that you found, or even over your career that you have found, that if a new leader were listening, that you think they need to know about organizational culture and climate?
Absolutely. Well, I will say that as a building leader, challenges will come, and that leadership will tend to come out, and that's when they need you the most. And so I'll give you an example. We've had some recent changes in recent years at Millard West. We've had some evolving needs and also our changing demographics. We all face that. Millard West, I can't, I'm so happy to be working here. I love the students. I love our staff. I love the community. I live just a mile down the road. I'm part of this community, but we have needs and we have challenges. And so when you talk about change to a school that has been pretty steady all these years, you're going to have some tensions rise to the conflicting priorities. Everybody has different desires. Everybody has different priorities or ideas. And so what happens in that situation, you have some team members that start to get hesitant to share ideas. They fear criticism. They fear dismissal by others. And so the conversation becomes defensive, becomes unproductive. And so this happened to us a few years ago as we were looking at some major changes. So I had to step in. And I had to step in with not with directives, but with vulnerability and also with a lot of clarity. So clarity is kindness. People appreciate just knowing specifically what you're after, specifically what we're seeking out, and where the end goal is. And you have to remind the groups and many times of the principle that we're all adults and it should be safe to disagree. Healthy teams challenge ideas, not people. I find that the time that I grow and feel closer to teams is when we disagree, and sometimes just work out a situation and by pulling all different perspectives together and see if we can find some common ground we can all agree on. But that was an example of a time that we had to change course based on staff input, and the more staff that give input, the muddier it gets, but it does bring openness to your building, and everyone feels like they have something at stake and that their ideas were considered. And my role as a leader is to become the listener and learner in the situation, to reserve my thoughts, hold my thoughts, and bring it in once everyone has had a chance to bring their thoughts in. So I think it's also important, I learned in this situation, is invite the quieter voices to share. Whether they're new staff, longtime veteran staff feel like they have something to offer. And explain from the beginning with norms that there's not going to be any judgment, only learning from each other. And that takes away some of the defensiveness, and you frame the questions to your thinking as collaborative opportunities. So it's really hard, though. I will tell you, Chris, I'm guilty of this. Is I sometimes want to push my own solution, and I have to ask continually, what's a better idea? What haven't we considered yet? So by framing things, by being careful with the language that you use, watch your body language as well. I think that you'll build a lot of trust in that way. When in a challenging situation, don't walk away from it. My best message to teachers is look, or new leaders is look for that opportunity and start building that collaboration, and just smile. You got an opportunity to build trust and build openness and closeness with your staff.
Thank you. I hope listeners, you need to pause, rewind, take notes, whatever, because first of all, and this is universal, when I have almost every guest eventually mentions the word vulnerability as a leader. And I've often said that in a word, that is a leader's superpower, is you have to be vulnerable because people are going to see our faults, whether we admit it or not. You know, the people we serve, especially if you're in formalized roles, I always say, kids hear your name at the dinner table. You are the topic of group texts, whether you want to be or not. So you might as well be vulnerable. Two things, leaders, I want you to listen to this: vulnerability and clarity. Whatever you're at right now, whatever issues you're facing, because they need us for a reason. If all the problems went away, people like myself and Greg probably wouldn't need to be in leadership roles. Where can I be more vulnerable and where can I be more clear? I also like that you talked about leaders or listeners and learners. So again, those of you watching or listening right now, very powerful message there. And because culture is created every day, I challenge you to go back, sit down and reflect on where can I be vulnerable and where can I be more clear. Greg, another thing that we find is, regardless of the job, but certainly in K-12 and higher ed, those that have what I call leadership leanings that really should move into a assistant principal, a dean role, dean of students, etc. The thought of conflict sometimes can keep people away from maybe what is their true calling as a leader. What do you have to say about that? Obviously, you don't get to where you are at without not only addressing conflict, but being pretty efficient at it. So from a leadership standpoint, Greg, what are your thoughts or advice about addressing conflict or having those uncomfortable conversations with people?
Yeah, I would say that look at it as an opportunity to grow. One of the things that conflict is hard. You'll have, as a leader, you'll just feel sometimes you'll be very alone. You have to have good colleagues from everywhere and kind of think through things. But yeah, you'll feel very alone, and conflict will happen. And there are times when I will tell you that it's uncomfortable. I'm not naturally into having debates with people. I'm not in a competitive nature. And so I guess I always think of win-win in that situation, rather than I have to be, my idea that I came up with at the very beginning has to be the way we go. So conflict is hard. So I think that one of the things you have to embed in your community is that conflict should be welcomed. I mean, if you have a team full of people and everybody agrees, you're probably ignoring some other perspective out there. And so you have to look at things not from your angle, but from other angles as well. And so a good conflict model that I've always approached some problem situations is a beach ball model. And you can put that into the problem situation. And I'm a context person. That's one of my Gallup strengths. Let's look at the history behind this. How long has this been going on? How is this affecting our organization or systemically? How is this affecting us as a whole, or how is it affecting individual people? And get the input from people. So like a beach ball has many different colors, many different angles. Let's get all different perspectives in there. And I think, okay, now we've created, everybody has an opportunity to weigh in. And then now we have to just look at, here are the options we could consider, and then kind of look at the positive and negatives of each option. So when my feeling with conflict is that it's a welcoming opportunity to build trust, and the teachers can be felt heard. They feel like they're respected. It's safe to offer creative, even critical feedback. I think that in the end, not everybody's going to have exactly what they want, but together as a whole, they feel pretty good about moving forward. And as you know, as well as I do, if you don't have staff buy-in, you're not going to go very far. You can present it in front of staff. This is the way we're going to go. I consulted only one person myself, and here's what we're going to do. And you just know that as soon as you leave the podium and they go to the classrooms, it's probably not going to be carried out with much spirit.
Well, I marked down what you said here. This is great. If we all agree, we're probably missing something. And I appreciate you saying that. I've never heard it that way. We've heard, show me a leader where everyone, thinks they're great all the time and everyone agrees, and there's probably not as effective. But I think that's very powerful, is if we agree, what are we missing? And that conflict is hard, but it can be a way to grow and develop trust. So I appreciate you sharing that, and those listening, very powerful there, because you have to lean into some of those hard conversations, and you probably shouldn't walk around looking for conflict, as, if you're a normal, well-adjusted human, but at the same time, it's part of leadership. Greg, you mentioned some things before we started here, and some areas that are very important to you, your leadership, your experience. And the three main areas that I want to share and have you elaborate on we're thinking three steps ahead in terms of strategic and visionary leadership, designing the conditions for breakthroughs, and that relates to high performance cultures, which it's clear you have, and then connections first, which is emphasizing culture of community and relationships to support that thriving school. So again, what are some things that you would like to share with those listening or watching about thinking three steps ahead, designing the conditions for breakthrough, and then connections first?
Absolutely. When it comes to three steps ahead, it's always been my philosophy that as a leader, you have to be a visionary. You have to think down the road. You can't live on a day-by-day situation where we survive today, we'll react to things tomorrow. You have to be proactive. And so one of the things that I value and get really respect out of Millard Public Schools is that we do strategic planning and we look at the next 5 years. And doing this, you create a team of people that have many different perspectives, come from many different backgrounds, including we invite students and parents involved in this as well. And we look at things through the lens of data. And then once we do that, we look at some of our challenges, but also some opportunities from that data. And we kind of examine things and we come up with our own kind of take on what's going on. What do we need to be ready for? And so three steps ahead is an approach to let's not always react to things. Let's look at what we have a month from now, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. We certainly don't want to get caught surprised. And so I feel like when challenges happen, we're ready for them. I feel like that the best schools are ones that prepare, and they also advocate with their school district, what we're facing, what needs we have, what resources that are out there, and then also just to bring clarity to your staff. This is something that I don't want to put a lot of caution, and I don't want to scare you, but here's something that's coming. We need to be ready for it. Here's what we're doing to get ready for that. And I think people feel good that at least some way that we know that somebody's looking into that, somebody's preparing for that, and these are the options that they're looking at. And so what you want to do is you want to shift that worry from your staff so that they can take care of their classroom, take care of the needs of their students, and not have to worry about. It's great to have staff that worry about the organization as a whole, but if you can take that stress from them by thinking 3 steps ahead and being very transparent what we're going to do to address those things, I think your staff feels better.
I think that's wonderful advice. I think, that the more we can think ahead and prepare for things, as you said, instead of just taking a day by day triage approach. And I like that is whoever we serve, whether they're K-12 teachers, higher ed, or if you're the CEO of the widget factory and the people you serve are on the assembly line, is I love what you said about shift the worry. A lot of times people, I think, with the best of intentions, certainly in education, because we all care about kids, we take on worry that, quite frankly, we can't control, or maybe it doesn't really affect us. And so I really like what you said there about communicating, thinking 3 steps ahead, being clear, and shifting that worry. What would you like to share about the next one related to high performance cultures? You said designing the conditions for breakthroughs.
Right. So I think that one of the things is when you work with curriculum or you work with an instructional designs with your teachers is map out or start with the beginning, begin with the end in mind. What can be, give them some hope. What will be the end product here, and how exciting is that going to be? And so that's part of we promote excellence in everything we do, whether it be in academics, whether it be athletics, activities, students' individual goals. Excellence is what's expected at the end. By coming to the approach of here, this is what we'll see at the end. That's exciting. Now let's go back to the steps to get there. And so with that, you have to work very collaboratively with your staff as far as like the steps. Along the way, I've learned that it's so exciting to meet the end. Graduation's so fun. Or when we see a project reach its end point, we feel great about that. But celebrate small steps, celebrate those small wins along the way. So if you have those things mapped out, let's look at where we're at. We may feel like we're not making very much progress here, but look, guys, this is what we set out as steps, and we've met that. Now our next step is this, and we celebrate that when that comes, and you just kind of walk that down that path together along with your staff, giving them guidance along the way. It's easy to be discouraged because sometimes we just are kind of in an impatient world. We want that end result right away, and sometimes, especially when you work with human beings and teenagers, and it takes a little while to get to those things that you want.
Well, and again, the concept of not only if it's actually curriculum design, but using that idea from curriculum design of start with the end in mind. What do we want that to look like? What are the main objectives? What's the behavior that we want to see? I have found that inherently those of us that were trained in K-12 teaching, and maybe you found this as well, and I try to empower classroom teachers when I do teacher leadership, is a lot of the things that you learn to be a great teacher make you a good leader. Because, thinking with, we're in August, back to school, and what do we need to do so in 180 days from now we can be successful with the end in mind? What are those steps that we need to take? So I really, really appreciate that with as you say, the conditions, designing the conditions for a breakthrough. And then the third one is what you called connections first, that emphasis of community of culture relationships. Anything that you want to expand upon in terms of your connections first mindset?
I think that one of the things when you discover your leadership identity is how do people see you. How do you want to be seen? How do you want to, with your identity, how do you want to connect with your staff? And there's many different ways of doing that, but you just know that the visibility has to come first. And there's a servant leadership model to know that I need to be out there, I need to be visible. That visibility is what brings a lot of trust. I had a former professor of mine who was a high school principal for many years who says it pays to advertise. Be seen, be in classrooms before you make any kind of judgment. See what the conditions are in a classroom. Help that teacher by giving them a lot of positivity, and then also just helping them discover on their own without trying to be micromanaging. Just ask what they've learned from their students. What will they learn from the different strategies they're trying to do in their classroom? So that connection is what you want to try to build by just being visible, by having that trust, by being somebody who cares, and then also just being that resource and help for when that teacher needs you. There are many times when I think teachers just a lot of times just need to be heard. They need to share what's going on, and also sometimes they just need you to step out of their way so they can do their job. So I think that part with the connections is important. I know that many times we say that it's important to be out of your office and be visible, but there are times when you just need to provide some sort of clarity and also be careful with the language that you use. So one of the approaches that I started doing last year, Chris, was through the advice of Todd Whitaker's book. I started doing what we call a Friday focus. And so at the beginning of the week, we have kind of like you have your push-pull communication. You push out your 411. That involves things that are coming up this week. The next things are up on the calendar. There's some items for you to be ready for. And then we have on the other side things I need you to do with links to those things, and it's all in one place. Then when we have kind of more of a pull communication, that is that it's there for you when you're ready for it. We put it in Google Classroom, and that's what I call a Friday focus. And I just started to share my thoughts and feelings of where we are by looking at data and giving my perspective and welcoming their perspective. And just as they read it, if there's something that comes to mind, I want to trigger your thoughts and get your ideas as well. Here's my take on it. I would love to have you all in a circle and bring this out. We don't have time. So you're reading my email, generating your own thoughts. If you have a question or if you have your own thought, here's a link to what we call a Q&A. Here's my agenda for next Monday as we meet with our admin team meeting. Here's what we're going to discuss. If you have a question or if you want something you want us to consider, throw that in the Q&A and we'll bring that into our meeting. But also we'll be transparent as to what was decided or where we're going, that kind of thing. So it doesn't, sometimes people feel like if I share too much, then that makes me vulnerable. But I think the more you can share, the more you can bring out, the more truth to things through your perspective. And a Friday focus, I think people appreciate that.
I think that's great, and I hope our listeners, wherever you're leading from, if you use email, which we all do, I think you can do that. I'm curious, in your experience using that method of communication, starting the week with one type of communication, ending it with a Friday focus. Have there been instances where after the fact you have found that maybe someone's initial response would be to be a little bit upset or worried, but after realizing that you communicated in those ways, or maybe they came to you and said, thank you, I would have thought this thing, but you communicated. I guess, do you have any stories from that kind of reinforce the value of just getting the message out there?
Yeah, one of the things is that that if you don't get the communication and the message out, somebody else will. And so you have to kind of always beat the drum, have the drum beat of positive information that's out there. Here's where we actually are. Here's what I'm excited for. Here's what's coming up. But also at the same time, it's very important that students or that your staff know how grateful you are to be working there, how much that we have to be thankful for. And always and never underestimate and never undermine the work that they do. Always appreciate the work of the staff. Find ways to bring praise, and then also you're trying to give them a lot of upholding the trust by giving them a lot of purpose as to why we're doing things, because once it's broken, it threatens the entire team culture. It's an opportunity to continually communicate, bring clarity, and it takes some time to do. You're taking some time to bring clarity by just putting it out there, kind of like a blog, to your staff so they can read it, understand it, know where we're going. You never shy away from things that are of a conflict nature. Look at things that could be a problem situation and try to get the information out there before it becomes something you have to react to or people become divided over. And so you all know that there's some people that will be in your teachers lounge. And if they have their own negative input on something, they will try to get that out before you do. So you're trying to beat that out there. If people have the data and they have your why we're doing this and what the purpose is and what we're trying to do, and invite their feedback. And you can invite their feedback in a couple of ways. One way is we have kind of like the parking lot with the Q&A. That's an informal, that's kind of a formal way through, and you're not really talking directly with somebody. Or invite the opportunity to have like a Q&A session just during lunch. I'm available if you'd like to come down. We could talk about a variety of things. A lot of times where things just pop up, like a safety issue or whatever. I'm available, have some treats or something now that people can just kind of stop down during their lunch hour and talk to you. Many times, if you have good communication on the email, they don't come down. So, but that's a good sign. But that's some of the things I've tried to do.
I really like that. Such great advice, because you touched on it. Oftentimes, in the absence of facts or data, the best story wins. And in a large organization, certainly the size of the school and the organization that you lead, I'm sure that there are multiple narratives that would win out. And so I appreciate you sharing those. Greg, as we come to a close here, I so appreciate the conversation. Again, Dr. Greg Tiemann, currently the principal at Millard West High School in Nebraska, which is outside of Omaha. Anything that, as we close out, you would like to share, whether it's advice to future leaders or follow up on something that we have already talked about?
I will say that leadership is a calling, and it's never just one moment. It's never just it's a continual thing. But I will tell you that if you're considering going into education and leadership, I will say it can be challenging. Sometimes you can feel very alone. Sometimes you feel like I'm never going to find a way to bring a solution to this. This is going to be a continual conflict over something, and then all of a sudden something emerges. The two favorite days that I have as a building leader is the first day with staff, which is coming up for me here. And that is that you're all undefeated. Everybody feels great. They've had a summer to refresh, and you kind of get excited for what's going on that year. And you put things in motion, and people are all happy, and they usually people are excited to see each other. And that's my favorite time of the year because you see that energy going into the year. Then my other favorite part of the year is graduation, because the fact that there are some students that you never thought would reach that stage or get that diploma are going to make it. And it's not easy to get a diploma at Millard West High School. The expectations are high, but I feel very confident that student had that much growth to make it, and having something to do with that. So if you're looking at going into educational leadership, it's a very, very there's nothing easy about it, but it's a very satisfying, it's very fulfilling, and you feel great purpose. There's not too many careers out there, Chris, that people just feel like what they do matters every day. And what you do, you may not feel, you may have started your day with a big agenda, and you may not have got to any of that agenda by the end of the day. That's many days like that, but you can walk away thinking, I made an impact. What I did really mattered. And you want to always share that with your teachers, that you may not feel it, but what you did mattered, and you'll see it. You'll find breakthroughs among your students. You'll find breakthroughs in your classroom, and just be persistent. It'll be there.
Great advice as we close out. Again, Dr. Greg Tiemann, I appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise and wisdom. I know it added value. Certainly, I'm always taking notes here. I've learned quite a bit from our time together and have been energized, and I know our listeners and viewers will have been able to say the same thing. So, Dr. Tiemann, thank you for joining us. And again, to those listening, I thank you. I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I appreciate it, and we will see you next time.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I enjoyed the conversation.